Why are we here? We are celebrating neurodiversity. Neurodiversity refers to the natural variation in human brains and how they function, learn, and behave, recognizing that there is no single right way to think, learn, or behave. It encompasses conditions like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and others, and we want to promote acceptance and inclusion of all neurotypes. In this podcast, we want to explore the many ways people learn, think, and work. We've reached out to a diverse group of people, neurodivergent individuals themselves, as well as those who support or supervise them, to hear their experience and insights. Alongside with me is my co-pilot, Amit, who will also share her personal experience. And we are excited to have Vanessa here with us to speak about her experience in supervising neurodivergent people. Our goal is to celebrate differences, challenge misconceptions, and inspire more inclusive and understanding workplaces. Together, we will explore what celebrating neurodiversity in academia truly means and why it matters. Okay, so let's introduce ourselves here. As I said already, I'm Marina. I'm your host, and I'm a PhD student here at the CVR.
Hi, I'm Amit. I'm a research associate here at the CVR.
My name is Vanessa, and I'm a research fellow working as an experimental pathologist.
And then we have three answers, anonymous answers written.
So the first person is a research fellow here at the CVR.
And I am introducing a second person, anonymous, which is working in the MPA family, focusing on management and admin for groups. So let's just dive into the first question we have asked people, which is, what does neurodiversity mean to you?
So we'll start with the answer that the first person gave us. He said, I'm autistic, although neurodiversity covers many different dimensions of how we interact and experience the world, which means cognitive processing, working memory, responses to stimuli. It's also not either or a thing nor a disorder. Each of these dimensions are a gradient, and where we lie on them is just natural variation when it comes to being a human. And I want to add my own perspective. He said it beautifully. I just also want to say that I think there's also an aspect of which culture we come from, because different cultures celebrate or cherish different aspects and different characters. So what might not be the norm in one culture might be considered completely normal social behavior in another, and vice versa. So I think it is all very also cultural dependent, and we should also take that into account.
And I'm reading the second person. So in quotes, to me, neurodiversity means recognizing and valuing the different ways people think, learn, and process information. Conditions like ADHD, autism, dyslexia, and others aren't deficits, but variations in cognitive functioning that bring unique strengths and outlooks. An inclusive environment doesn't just accommodate these, but actively leverages on them. Neurodiversity means, to me, to acknowledge that people have different ways to think, work, and communicate. The challenge with working with people is to accept the differences and try to bring all different ways together to succeed in our projects.
Yeah, my perspective to this is working with people who have neurodiversity brings a lot of value in different ways to the team. Sometimes people think and work differently and have unique solving strategies for different problems. And I'm enjoying working with neurodivergent people as they see sometimes the problem or the research question from a different perspective, and which I think brings the science forward.
So our next question was, can you give an example of how neurodivergence has impacted your professional life?
Okay, so what this person told us is that for me, task switching is very difficult. As an analogy, my thinking process functions similarly to a freight train. It can move very quickly, taking a heavy load in a single focused direction, but it's never going to be able to make handbrake turns and sudden switches. This means working in academia is sometimes challenging because the career model is to do lots of different types of working tasks throughout our day. In a similar way, I struggle with having to unlearn established systems, like when a new policy or rule set comes in. And spontaneity in communication, like answering questions after a talk, I would much rather consider and write my response. When taking professional development courses, I've often felt like the advice didn't quite apply to me. For example, when applied to productivity, the commonly used analogy of rocks, pebbles, and sand for prioritizing the gradient heavy to light or more important to less important tasks works really well for lots of people. But for me, I have to warm up my mental muscles scoping sand first, because otherwise I won't even be able to contemplate picking up a rock. I think things are changing now, but a lot of transferable skills training has not been designed to consider neurodivergent people. Or even worse, not being designed without any input from neurodivergent people. I agree very much with what this person said, and I want to add my own personal perspective, which was fascinating reading what this person said. And I thought, oh, so you say that academia is not focused enough? Because for me, it feels the other way. I feel that I have to focus many of the ideas I have and put them aside. And it requires me to be too focused, more than what I feel comfortable with. So it's interesting to see how we all have different brains and we think in different dimensions.
The written response I'm going to read out is very similar to Amit's ideas about it. So let me just read it. In quotes, I enjoy working in environments where I can multitask and solve problems thinking outside the box. I sometimes struggle with maintaining focus on repetitive tasks or distracting environments, like open plan offices. Since I was little and without realizing, I learned to implement strategies and coping mechanisms, such as structured task lists, setting up calendar reminders, use my phone's note app to write random thoughts, or to-do lists, and working in short bursts to keep my brain engaged.
Thank you. And Marina, is there another person that you would like to share their thoughts with us?
Yeah, so the thoughts from the PhD student. In quotes, there are many things I would say are beneficial to me, but there are also many challenges. I think I have always energy to start a new exciting thing, get very excited about the tiniest things, can dive into coding and Excel for hours, have creativity, and I'm good in solving problems. But then there is also the impatience, struggle to finish a boring project without just going to the next. A lot of overthinking in communications with colleagues, and a restless mind, which just doesn't stop. I don't know how all this played in my path here, but I guess I made it here, which is the great part.
From my perspective, I had and still have the pleasure to work with quite a few neurodivergent people, and it was always fun to supervise them. And I took this as a chance to learn from and with them, and I made sure to understand what they need to excel in the workplace. That means also that I inform myself about neurodiversity and speak about it with people, and I enjoy the diversity and their different personalities very much.
Okay, going to the next question. How could your work environment change to make it more supportive?
So one of the answers that I got were that generally events or meetings are scheduled with an obvious purpose or even an agenda in advance, which is great. But sometimes there are very last-minute changes to schedules. For me, forward planning is needed because my cognitive process can grind to a halt if I need to do something that I wasn't anticipating. So I won't be able to meaningfully contribute to any sudden meetings last minute before a deadline. And I just want to contribute from my own perspective. I think that one of the important things is to understand that we are all different. I think that communication is a key for people to communicate between each other, to understand what they need. And I think it would also help a lot if some of those workshops or, those adjustments are done with people who are neurodivergent, because then it is much easier to design it to fit as many people as possible.
A supportive work environment would involve clearer communication, written instructions, scheduled one-to-ones with line managers, structured workflows, and direct feedback help minimize misunderstandings and frustrations. Flexibility, Allowing remote work, flexible hours, or adjustments in workload pacing can be incredibly beneficial for neurodivergent people. Awareness and training, educating teams on neurodiversity reduces the stigma and fosters a more inclusive culture. And the last one, sensory considerations, reducing unnecessary noise, providing quiet workspaces, or allowing alternatives can make a difference in comfort and well-being. Not everyone is the same when it comes to sensory overload. I'm reading the next person as well. In quotes, I think the most important part is to understand yourself and then to speak up. Have conversations with your bosses and colleagues when there are problems. And then they're hopefully listening to you and try their best to improve your experience, which I think can be improved here at the CVR.
Yeah, I think for me the most important is that people are aware. It's not about the environment for me, to my experience, it's about the people I work with. Is if communication is great, I always say and make the joke, there's not such a thing like over communication. Everything works. For me, it's not environment in terms of things, it's environment in terms of people, and this works really well. And if the communication is excellent, everyone with neurodiversity can feel included and work to their best capabilities, which is always the goal.
What advice would you give to neurodivergent people to make their professional experiences more positive?
Thank you. So the first person, he says that a lot of people might say, just ask for any working adjustment you need. But it should be recognized that not everyone understands neurodiversity, and there can be risks to outing ourselves. So it should always remain a personal decision. I am still learning and understanding what works best for me, so I'm not doing it perfectly, far from it, but it was to give any advice, it would be to everyone. Consider sooner the way you work and whether you might have additional needs. As much as I felt I knew who I was and what I was good at, I didn't even conceptualize that I might be neurodivergent until later in my career. And I didn't realize that certain changes could help me, rather than pushing myself to force my mind to do something it just isn't good at. Even though 15% of UK population reports neurodivergence, that figure reduces to 5% of STEM students and less than 1% of STEM academics, which suggests either neurodiversity is going unrecognized or neurodivergent people are experiencing barriers. I want to say, I think it's a very good answer. I feel that way many times myself. Again, I'm sharing my personal perspective as Amit. I think that understanding who we are is important. Looking for online or talking to people and feeling that we are not alone in something is very important and can help a lot to cope with it. And actually, in some point, even going from being like, oh, what a bummer, I have this and that, to, oh, okay, so my brain is just thinking in a different way. Okay, that's great. And I want to add that I don't think there are something like typical and atypical. I think we are all thinking in different ways, and it's just a matter of how we find a way to communicate with other people, how we think, what we want, what we need, and obviously finding a way to understand the needs of other people. So again, I'm going to the bottom line, which is communication is a key.
Okay, I'm reading through the answers from the MDA person, just to have that in mind from where the person comes from. Advocate for yourself. In certain accommodations or adjustments help you work better, don't be afraid to ask for them. Second, find a work style and space that suits you. Experiment with productivity techniques like the Pomodoro method, noise-cancelling headphones, or flexible working hours. I struggle with sensitivity to bright lights, so sitting in the office during a full day in the winter is not my idea of fun. The third one, leveraging your strengths and be guided by your interests and not only the must-dos. There will be boring tasks and you might have to find extra motivation to do them. But if you always keep something interesting on the side, a hobby, a planned trip, these will become less painful to complete. And the last one, seek supportive environments and people. Workplaces that embrace flexibility and inclusion can make a significant difference in your mental well-being and thus your work performance. And reading out the answer from the PhD student, listen to your guts on what you like to do and try to find exactly that for your PhD. This journey is so difficult, so at least you want to know that in the beginning you made this decision 100% yourself and you were excited. For everyone who doesn't have a calendar and notebook, I don't know how you survived till now, but get one, it's my lifesaver. And I would also recommend to record everything you are doing. I use OneNote with tick boxes. This will let you go back an hour, a week, or a year, and you can see you are actually doing well. I also like ticking off to-dos. It gives you a little kick to keep going, and these little kicks are so important.
Yeah, from my experience, I've seen people who are neurodivergent and were brilliant at their work, and they suffered because the line managers and co-workers didn't appreciate their difference. So my advice would be, if you are neurodivergent, before you choose to work with someone or in a group, make sure the communication in this group is excellent and you feel valued there. This is the most important. I think neurodivergent people want to be a bit more careful in choosing their supervisors, as they have special needs, and if the communication in this group is brilliant, it's all fine for everyone.
Thank you. So great. Now just we have a last category. Is there anything else you would like to share or discuss?
Okay, so the first person says, I think the changes we need are more systematic to the academia. We can make adjustments so we are comfortable in the day-to-day working life, but the long-term career progression will always be more challenging for neurodivergent people, because in that scientific career model, we are expected to broaden out from a research focus to take on a lot more new responsibilities we have less experience with, and often no formal training in. For example, reviewing papers, developing teaching materials, or grant writing. It should not be about having to change neurodivergent people to fit with academia, because for all the professional development we can do, we are always going to be limited in particular traits. Instead, it should be about changing academia to fit around the needs of everyone, including neurodivergent people. And I agree with what this person said. And I also think that a lot of times we just, again, if we get out from this perspective of a typical and atypical brain, and we just understand that we all have our unique ways of thinking. So I think the moment that we open up our mind to this concept and just learn to accept each other, I think it would be much easier to communicate with each other. And I think that, again, like if someone is neurodivergent, and something that was fascinating for me to read in what this person who says they are autistic said, is that I read it and I said, again, I feel that I don't get to showcase all the things that I can do. I feel that a lot of stuff I kind of have to strip away and focus on very specific methods. So it almost made me think maybe we should actually pair people who say that academia is too focused with people who say academia is not focused enough in teams, so they can just contribute to each other, instead of them just trying to fit to some model that maybe someone who's not too focused or little focused felt is the right thing. So again, I think all those changes and adjustments had to be done with people who are neurodivergent, not just people who don't see themselves as such, trying to fit into something that they don't even understand how it feels or what it is like. So this is what I can contribute here. Marina?
Yeah, I actually have something from my perspective as well. I heard today that neurodiversity is like biodiversity, and now we are all scientists, so I think we can really appreciate that comparison. Biodiversity means we need every single small piece and to make it great, and I think that's a really good comparison. So I'm also reading out from a person in quotes, I think one of the biggest misconceptions about neurodivergence in the workplace is that it's only about challenges, but many neurodivergent people bring exceptional creativity, problem-solving abilities, and unique insights and thinking. Workplaces that embrace this and let their staff engage in their genuine interest will see them flourish and in return, perform much better at their jobs.
I can only add to this that things like this is the most important. Speak about everything all the time with everyone to create an environment of understanding, and then I think it can work well.
Thank you. I'm thanking Vanessa and obviously Amit, but you will speak after as well, maybe me. Thank everybody who contributed, and I'm hoping that this is like something people would like to listen to. And we have this open conversations at the CVR more often.
Yeah, actually what I wanted to suggest is after reading all those fantastic answers that people shared with us, and also in light of the fact that we are all aware that getting a professional diagnosis here in Scotland is almost impossible. The waiting time can be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. So first of all, it's very important that we say that here we don't care what's the professional diagnosis if you even wanted to get one. If you're a person that feels that any of that applies to you, I think that should be enough, and it shouldn't be that people feel uncomfortable to say that just because they were not professionally diagnosed. And I think that after reading all that, what I thought would be interesting is that we'll have some sort of a focus group or unfocus group or brainstorming group where a bunch of us can sit and maybe draft something, some guidelines written by neurodivergent people for neurodivergent people in the rest of the community. So the adjustments would be much easier for everybody. And we are talking about daily work, relationships with colleagues, with line managers, even how to deal with writing a thesis or making a presentation, a paper, a grant, whatever we need. Okay, so thank you everybody for listening. I hope we contributed to something, shed another light on this topic. And please don't hesitate to come and talk to us more if you have anything more to say, you want to share, you want to support, whatever, we are here.